Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've always been a hard worker, taking pride in my job as a construction foreman. My trusty pickup truck has been my companion through thick and thin, helping me haul materials and tools to job sites all over town. I live in a quiet neighborhood, or at least I thought I did until recently. A few weeks ago, I noticed some things missing from my truck bed. At first, I thought I was just being forgetful, but as more items disappeared, I knew something was up. We're talking about my old tarp, some piping, bungee cords, and straps for securing loads. Nothing super valuable, but annoying as hell to lose. I decided to do some investigating and talk to a few of my neighbors. One of them, an older guy who's always sitting on his porch, told me he'd seen someone hanging around across from my street corner late at night. He didn't seem too bothered by it, which irritated me a bit. The neighbor casually mentioned he'd seen someone lurking around my truck a few times, but didn't think much of it. When I asked why he didn't mention it or call the cops, he just shrugged and said it wasn't his business. His nonchalant attitude frustrated me even more. I walked away, frustrated, but determined to solve this problem myself. That's when I remembered those viral videos of people getting back at package thieves with glitter bombs and fart spray. I figured I could do one better. I found an old toolbox with a busted latch and a cheap lockbox I'd used for garage sales. Perfect for my plan. I taped a note inside both lids that said, "Since you seem to enjoy stealing my stuff, I hope this was worth your time." Then came the fun part. The next time nature called, instead of using the toilet, I answered it right into those containers. Yeah, you heard that right. I dropped a few turds in each box. I locked the cash box, but only put a flimsy zip tie on the toolbox. To make it more enticing, I threw some nails and screws in one of the drawers so it'd sound like there were still tools inside. That night, I left both containers in my truck bed, making sure they were visible. I could barely sleep, wondering if my trap would work. The next morning, I rushed outside. Lo and behold, both items were gone. I laughed, imagining the thief's face when he opened those boxes, expecting a score, only to find my special delivery. For over a week, there was no sign of the guy. I guess he learned his lesson the hard way. I mean, he literally stole 2 boxes of human waste, thinking he'd hit the jackpot. Talk about a crappy situation. I realized I needed to be more careful. I've stopped being lazy and now transfer everything from the truck to my house every night. I'm also planning to invest in a home surveillance system. But you know what? As gross as it was, I found the whole thing pretty amusing. The dude wanted hell, so I gave him some damn hell. Literally. A few days later, I was having a beer with my buddy from work, and I couldn't resist sharing the story. I started by telling him he wouldn't believe what happened with the thief I'd mentioned earlier. My buddy asked if I'd caught him, to which I replied that I'd done even better, catching him with his pants down, so to speak. I proceeded to tell him the whole story, and by the end, he was laughing so hard he nearly fell off his chair. Wiping tears from his eyes, he exclaimed that it was the best thing he'd heard all year, and that I'd really shown that thief. I joked that I'd given him a taste of his own medicine. My buddy quipped that it was more like I'd given the thief a taste of my own, before trailing off. He then asked more seriously if I thought the thief was gone for good. I responded that I hoped so, but if not, I had plenty more where that came from. I lost my leg in a car accident when I was 15. It was tough, but I learned to adapt. Now at 23, I've got a cool prosthetic leg that lets me do almost everything I used to. Sure, some days are harder than others, but I try to stay positive. Anyway, this particular day I needed to grab some groceries. I was feeling pretty good, wearing shorts that showed off my prosthetic. I figured, why hide it? It's part of who I am now. So there I was, browsing the cereal aisle, minding my own business, when this woman and her kid came barreling down the aisle. The woman was yapping away on her phone, not paying attention to where she was going. Before I knew it, she slammed right into me. I stumbled and fell hard on the floor. My prosthetic leg came loose, but thankfully, it didn't come off completely. I was more shocked than hurt, to be honest. The woman just glared at me like I was the one who ran into her. She didn't even bother to help me up or apologize. Instead, she spoke into her phone, telling whoever was on the other end to hold on because some clumsy person had gotten in her way. I tried to get up, but it wasn't easy with my prosthetic leg loose. I asked her to help me up, explaining that she had run into me. The woman rolled her eyes and actually stepped over me to grab a box of cereal. Her kid, who looked about 8 or 9, was staring at my prosthetic leg with wide eyes. The woman told me to stop making a scene, insisting it was my fault for not watching where I was going. I protested, pointing out that she wasn't even looking and was on her phone. That's when things got really weird. The woman bent down and whispered something to her kid. The next thing I knew, the kid was reaching for my prosthetic leg. I yelled at the kid to stop, asking what they were doing. The kid replied that their mom said they could have it because it looked cool. Was this woman seriously telling her kid to take my prosthetic leg? I tried to scoot away, but the kid was persistent. I tried to explain that this wasn't a toy, but a part of my body, and told them to leave it alone. The woman chimed in, calling me selfish and insisting that I should take off my prosthetic and let her son play with it for a bit. I was getting scared now. The kid was actually trying to pull my prosthetic off, and it hurt. I yelled for help, hoping someone would hear me. That's when my hero showed up. This tall, muscular guy came running down the aisle. He took one look at the situation and sprang into action, demanding to know what was going on. The woman tried to act all innocent, claiming that I was being mean to her son and making a big fuss about him wanting to look at my toy leg. The hero wasn't buying it. He helped me up and stood between me and the woman. He explained to her that it wasn't a toy, but a prosthetic leg, and that she couldn't just let her kid grab it off someone. The woman got all huffy and tried to push past him to get to me. That was a big mistake. The hero blocked her, and she took a swing at him. Big mistake number 2. In one smooth move, the hero dodged her punch and swept her legs out from under her. She went down hard, hitting her head on the floor. She was out cold. The kid started crying, and I was just sitting there in shock. The hero turned to me, all concerned, asking if I was okay and if they had hurt me. I managed to stammer out that I was fine, just shaken up, and thanked him profusely. It turns out the hero was a black belt in some martial art. He stayed with me until the police and paramedics arrived. The woman was arrested for assault, and Child Protective Services got involved with her kid. I gave my statement to the police, and the store manager was super apologetic. They even gave me a gift card for my trouble, which was nice, but honestly, I was just glad to be okay. The hero made sure I got home safely. He was really cool about everything, didn't make a big deal about saving me or anything, just said he was glad he could help. So yeah, that's my crazy story of entitlement gone wild. I'm grateful for the good people out there who are willing to step up and help when things get crazy. I've been working at an internet provider company for about 5 years now. I started as a regular customer service rep, but I worked my way up to lead in the internet repair department. It's a pretty sweet gig, all things considered. I get to help people fix their internet issues, and I'm the go-to person when things get a bit hairy. My day-to-day job involves handling calls from our agents when they're stuck or when a customer demands to speak to a higher-up. We deal with all sorts of internet problems, outages, equipment replacements, you name it. One of the common issues we face is when customers upgrade or downgrade their internet speed, and the change doesn't take effect immediately. We have a special tool to fix that, and it usually only takes a couple of minutes. So, there I was, having what seemed like a typical day at work. I've been fielding calls left and right, helping agents transfer equipment between accounts, scheduling technicians for stubborn customers who refuse to do any troubleshooting themselves. You know, the usual stuff. Then I got a call from one of our agents. She sounded a bit frazzled. The agent explained that she had a customer demanding to speak to a supervisor because he claimed he wasn't getting the speeds he was paying for. I sighed internally. This was a common complaint, usually stemming from people not understanding how internet speeds work. There are so many factors involved: distance from the router, Wi-Fi versus wired connection, number of devices, and even the building materials of their house. I pulled up the customer's account information. I asked the agent about the customer's plan and the speeds he was getting. She told me he was on the 100 megabits per second plan, but was getting 437 megabits per second. I blinked. That was not what I was expecting. I told the agent to go ahead and transfer the customer to me, assuring her that I'd handle it from here. A moment later, I heard a gruff voice on the line. The customer immediately started complaining, saying it was about time he got to speak to someone in charge and that the situation was completely unacceptable. I greeted the customer politely and asked how I could help him with his internet speed issue. The customer responded angrily, demanding that we give him what he's paying for and insisting on compensation. I tried to interject to explain that speed test results can vary, but he wasn't having any of it. The customer threatened to record the call and post everything on social media. He accused me of working for a company that doesn't provide what people pay for and said I should be ashamed of myself. As he ranted, I noticed something interesting in his account history. He had recently downgraded his plan from 500 megabits per second to 100 megabits per second. This change had happened just 2 days ago. I attempted to explain what I saw in his account history, but the customer cut me off. He declared that he didn't care what I could see and threatened to report us to the Federal Communications Commission and the Better Business Bureau. He even mentioned suing the company for false advertising. Now, normally, I'd let this slide. The system would eventually correct itself and the customer would get the speed they were paying for. But something about his attitude rubbed me the wrong way. So I decided to take a different approach. I apologized to the customer, agreeing that he wasn't receiving the speeds he was paying for. I assured him that I would fix it right away. I ran our special tool adjusting his speed down to the 100 megabits per second he was now paying for. This plan, by the way, was a special low-income option that customers had to apply and be approved for. After making the adjustment, I asked the customer to run another speed test and tell me the results. There was a pause, and then the customer responded with confusion and anger. He demanded to know what I had done, claiming that his speed was even worse now and accusing me of trying to pull some kind of trick on him. I calmly explained that I had simply corrected the error in his service. I pointed out that he had recently applied for our financial assistance program and was approved for the 100 megabits per second plan. I apologized again for the inconvenience of previously sending him 500 megabits per second when he was only paying for 100. The line went quiet for a moment. Then, I heard a muffled comment about the situation being ridiculous before the call disconnected. I made sure to leave detailed notes on his account about what had happened, including that he wasn't entitled to any bill credit. The rest of my shift was pretty uneventful after that. Just the usual calls about router issues and scheduled maintenance. But every now and then, when I'm dealing with a particularly difficult customer, I think back to this call and remind myself, sometimes the best way to deal with unreasonable demands is to give people exactly what they're asking for. No more, no less. My sister and I were always close, despite the typical sibling squabbles. I watched her grow from a pigtailed kid to a beautiful teenager, and I felt responsible for keeping her safe. Our parents were pretty standard. Dad was a strong, silent type, while Mom was more nurturing and sometimes a bit naive. We lived in a tight-knit community where everyone knew everyone else's business. It was the kind of place where you'd expect teens to rebel by staying out past curfew or sneaking a beer, not getting mixed up with hardcore drugs. It began when my sister brought home this guy for dinner. The moment I saw him, alarm bells started ringing in my head. He looked way too old to be hanging out with my 14-year-old sister. I asked him how old he was, trying to keep my voice casual. He claimed he was 16, but I didn't believe it for a second. I exchanged a look with my dad. This dude was clearly in his mid-20s, no way he was 16. But my mom, bless her heart, was oblivious to the red flags. She gushed about what a nice young man he was and how good it was to see my sister making friends. The guy started showing up every day after that, trying to buddy up to me. He was one of those types who'd criticize your every move in a video game, acting like he knew everything. Once, while we were playing, he mocked my strategy, calling me a noob and saying it wasn't even competitive. I couldn't understand what my sister saw in him. She was smart, pretty, and could do so much better. But I tried to bite my tongue, not wanting to push her away by being too critical. Things took a turn when my mom asked me to check my sister's room for dirty dishes. Instead of plates, I found a stash of cigarettes, vapes, and other stuff I won't name. I was shocked. How did my 14-year-old sister get her hands on this? I went straight to my dad with what I'd found. He was as stunned as I was. We decided not to confront my sister directly, but to get to the bottom of this. I had a hunch about where all this stuff was coming from. The next time the boyfriend came over, I made sure my mom wasn't home. I didn't want her trying to stop me from doing what needed to be done. I grabbed the guy and demanded to see his ID. He acted confused, pretending not to understand why I was asking. I told him to cut the crap and show me. When I saw that ID, I nearly lost it. 21 years old. This adult had been preying on my little sister, a child. I pushed my sister aside probably harder than I should have, but I was seeing red. I confronted the guy about the drugs, asking if he had given them to my sister. He denied everything, claiming he didn't know what I was talking about. I'm not proud of it, but I got physical. I grabbed him and started applying pressure. Living in a small village, I knew there was no way my sister could have gotten this stuff on her own. It had to be him. I threatened him, saying he'd regret ever stepping foot in our house if he didn't tell me the truth. Finally, he cracked. He admitted that he'd been using our place to store his drug products and that he was a dealer. He claimed my sister didn't know the whole story. I lost it. I started yelling, and my sister tried to intervene, crying and screaming. My dad, who'd woken up from the commotion, stood back and let me handle it. In a burst of anger, I threw a punch that knocked the guy out cold. We called the police, and to my relief, they were more concerned with the drug dealer than with my assault on him. They asked me some questions, but that was it. It's been 4 months since then. The guy got arrested, and my sister hasn't spoken to me since. It hurts, but I know I did the right thing. My dad thanked me for protecting our family, and even my mom, once she got over the initial shock, understood why I did what I did. I may have lost my sister's trust for now, but I'd do it all over again to keep her safe. Maybe one day she'll understand that I was just looking out for her. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.